Hi friends, welcome back to 3 Barrow Farm. For those who are new here, my name is Amy and I live on an off-grid homestead with my family of 5, and we try to grow as much food as we can while living lightly on this earth. And today I'm out in the garden weeding. It is another glorious sunshiny day. I think it's going to get up to 17 degrees today, which is amazing. While I'm weeding the pathways and some of the garden beds in my vegetable patches, I'm just taking note of all the things I need to do. There are so many seedlings popping up. There are lettuce seedlings to move. There's some leek seedlings here in this path right here to move as well. So I'm just taking out the clumps of grass that have started to really take off in this sunny weather that we've been having. And it's a really good time to get on top of the weeds now before they really take off in springtime. So I'm observing things as I work through the garden, and one thing that I'm really noticing is that my soil in some of the rows is looking quite dry. There are these cracks occurring in the top layer of the soil, but underneath it is still moist and wet. The water is getting through, and this just indicates to me that perhaps it's time to start mulching a bit. I didn't mulch in autumn, not much anyway. I did do a little bit around my brassicas. So in the areas where I've heavily planted, I'm noticing that there's not really any cracking going on. It is really only where the sun is penetrating to the soil, so it's reaching the soil. And the ground likes to be covered. It likes to have a ground cover over itself, and that's why grass and weeds grow where there's bare soil. So I'm taking note that next time in autumn, I'm going to mulch my garden beds with sugarcane mulch and make sure that any bare soil is covered, just so I don't have that drying out on the top sort of 0.5 centimetre to 1 centimetre of soil. And I know that underneath the soil is nice and moist, and the pathways are definitely very moist. They have had coverings over them, so they're definitely keeping all that moisture in. But appearance-wise, it looks dry. Like, it appears to me that it looks dry. It's also very hard. Like, I can take off slabs of the top layers, and underneath it's cold and it's wet. And one way of knowing whether it has enough moisture in it is that if you squeeze the soil underneath and it keeps its position, then it's wet enough. So I'm not too worried about the plants not having enough water. It's more an indicator to me that it will continue to dry out if it can't keep that moisture in the top few layers of soil. So I'm going to go and get some sugarcane mulch as soon as we do a trip to the big town near us. And there's actually a trip later this week, so I'm hoping that I can have all of the sugarcane mulch down on the rows that are bare. And when it rains, we're going to get a huge amount of rain on Tuesday. So when it rains on Tuesday, it's going to really compact it into the soil. And then hopefully the moisture will soften the top layers of the soil and it won't dry out, because I will have that sugarcane mulch on my garden. So one thing that Luna here is reminding me of to chat to you about today is that I'm going to be moving my compost bins from my gardens. We're going to have a designated compost area. And while it's been fantastic to have the compost bins at the end of each row, and that, you know, when it's done, I take it off and I smooth it out onto that particular row, I'm feeling like the addition of our lovely dogs here is making it difficult to keep these bins here. They will get onto a scent, whether it's bones being in the compost or whether it's mice being in the compost bins, and they dig underneath and get up into the compost bins. I've even tried to pin these compost bins down. Now this one is actually buried in quite a decent amount of soil, so this one has been fine. It hasn't been affected. But other ones that I've still had the soil around, and I've also pinned down recently, they have dug underneath around the compost bins and dug underneath and gone under that way. And even if I went to put some mesh underneath the compost bins, I think it still wouldn't deter these dogs from smelling things and trying to get in. They will just keep trying. So we're going to do another method eventually. But this also means that I get some more space in my veggie gardens. I get to grow food in these spaces where I've got the bins. And that is actually really necessary because I'm actually going to be shortening my gardens just a tiny bit because of some work that we're going to be doing eventually. So there is going to be a lot of changes around here coming up in the next few seasons, which is really exciting because we're getting to do other things. But I'm also going to lose some garden space in the meantime. However, I've got 2 functioning gardening patches and eventually I will have 5 functioning ones. So the amount of growing space that I'm going to have is actually going to more than double in size. I've got so many kales coming up in this row here, and I really need to move them elsewhere and thin them out because there are a heap of them. And I have noticed in my other patch with my kale, where I've let them all grow really close together, they're actually starting to go to seed now. They're starting to shoot up their heads, and I can see the flower stems there ready to go, which is fine. I'll probably harvest them all before they actually go to seed, and I'll be using them in meals, and I will be dehydrating them as well to make a kale green powder. But I want to make the most of this red Russian kale that I have growing here. It is growing really nicely, and it's come from a plant that I let go to seed. So another thing I'm going to be working on is preparing a row, and this is what I'm going to be doing on the weekend. I'm going to be moving all these plants. I'm just prepping the areas right now, and then I will be, of course, putting sugarcane mulch down. But I'm just going to break that top layer of soil just to soften up the bed because it is quite hard because of that drying crust at the top of the soil. I also have these Asian greens growing here, and I can see that there is a seed head coming up here. So I'm going to want to harvest these, and some of the leaves are starting to go yellow and die off. They're the older leaves here, and they're being chewed on because they're running out of their nutrients. So I need to harvest these along with some pak choys as well, which I'm noting might go to seed, especially with this warmer weather we're having. The warmer weather definitely sets off these plants to start putting out their seed so that they can start multiplying during the spring and summer. So I'm going to need to harvest these one box very soon as they start to go to seed. I don't want them to all end up going to seed, but I've got quite a few, so we will have a lovely amount of Chinese cabbage to eat. And in between the wonbok I have these cauliflowers, which are very young compared to the ones that I'm now harvesting heads from. These ones I planted in the garden in late autumn, so they didn't get that sunshine that the other cauliflowers that I planted much earlier did. And so hopefully they will grow heads, but we shall wait and see, and I will get back to you and we will see what happens, whether they grow some nice big heads or whether they just grow tiny ones, which they then shoot up to seed. I've also got some young cabbages as well that I grew from seed, and these ones are also taking their time. But with this warmer weather, we shall see whether they put on a lot more growth and whether we get some cabbages sooner than later. But the brassicas do take a while to grow, and they really do like that sunshine in early autumn to get a head start. So these brassicas here, I'm just giving a little bit of care and maintenance while I go through and weed the gardens. And I'm taking off all of the older leaves. These leaves no longer benefit the plant because all of the nutrients has come out of them and they're starting to die off. And the best thing we can do is take them away so that they don't encourage the pests to come and eat at them. So when I look under here, I've got all this breaking down sugarcane mulch, which is fantastic. And in springtime, when I go to plant out this section with new plants, I will put some manure on top and then I'll put more sugarcane mulch on top of that. So I've managed to do quite a lot of weeding today, which has been fantastic. And I've mowed around my garden beds, which is great as well. And now I'm just mixing up and turning 3 of my compost bins, which are pretty much ready to go onto the garden. I think I will be popping these out in September, ready for planting things for spring. So that's exciting. And then I will be planting into this section. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to move these bins elsewhere. We're going to have a composting bay, and we're also going to do our pallet compost again, which we used to do, but we're going to do it slightly differently. But yeah, these compost bins have been fantastic at changing our house scraps into beautiful compost, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the garden grows this spring and summer from this beautiful compost I've made here. Well, it has been a fantastic day in the garden. I'm so grateful for this weather. It has been just beautiful to work out here and quite warm too. So I am getting closer to my garden being ready for spring planting. I'm very excited about what is to come. My tomato seedlings have started to sprout, which is very exciting, and I've got lots of flowers ready to plant out. Of course, some of those flowers I won't be able to put out yet because they don't like the frost, but I do have some that I can plant out, like the calendula and the sweet peas. I can get those out into the garden. So that is my plan for the weekend, to get those out and get some beds ready for spring planting. I hope you are having a wonderful August, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon for another video. Take care, my friends.